tell them Marshall bring you.
But everything.
Yeah, I heard about that.
It was awful.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And then I've been with, I don't know if
We all stay in business.
And it was dry.
Gene.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Like he'll get it.
So, man, you can keep it going.
Oh, it was good in here.
Yeah, it does.
We had
See?
another
Hear that?
air conditioning in March.
Marion says it feels good in here.
We were just talking about
That's all right. He'll be going on tonight.
I was out in the sun all day. Got my redneck tan going.
His arms go straight like that.
There you go.
What's up, Peyton? Well, start off in Lexington Park. That's where I start. Blend. Yeah. That was one of Rod's favorite customers. Yeah. All I know, his name is Bill. Yeah, he always went through Rod. He wanted to know him, he wouldn't call Jeff. He tell Rod to tell Jeff.
I started early one time, almost got in trouble. I learned my lesson.
Yeah.
Long before everything's ready.
Yeah.
I got
I was like,
a good moment.
It is.
I appreciate it. This sounds like one
Yes,
rule.
yes it is.
I decided to check on him today. You know, he's around the Violent, New Jersey for like 2 stops. He says, yeah, I got the first load off.
something's going on. And I got this on silent.
Mosquito knows what a vitamin is.
Oh yeah. I've been there many days.
Check and see if you were.
Well, that's why the phone call is, isn't it?
You don't want mom calling you.
No, it ain't so much that. I set my alarm. I don't want this alarm going off. If I hadn't called him, he would have drove 2 hours extra or more to get to Philly. Where was he supposed to?
Good Lord.
Fine, let me, it was 2 in mine. He's steady, hasn't put him down. All he had to do is look, build 2, ship 2.
That's the opposite way.
You don't make those
got it.
mistakes. I'm like, you got it. Call the meeting to order. Invocation, and John will have the pledge of allegiance all bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us all safely here tonight and to be with us as we continue to go for Richmond County's planning. We also ask that you be with Ukraine and the citizens as they go through these trying times. With this, we ask in thy name, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Do we have anything for anybody sign for public comment? Being no public comment. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes for February the 7th, 2020. Any corrections or additions to the minutes?
Yes, sir. Let me get my page out here. One correction, page 6, last page. First line, instead of saying just carbon map, it should say carbon-free facility map. And that's all I have.
Any other? So I have a motion to accept with the correction.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those through, please raise your right hand. All those, thank you very much. The next is the, I can't say that first word, Celia LLC.
Cerulean.
Cerulean. Morgan will share with us.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members. Just to kind of give you a little bit of a roadmap on what we're going to do tonight, and ask you all to consider. So we've got 2 applications that we've been going through. We've got Cerulean, which is the solar project, 62 megawatt solar facility. And we've also got the Mulberry Energy Storage Facility. As I believe we told you last month, we're still in the phase of working with Strata on the conditions of Mulberry. You should have received tonight from Hope a copy of the draft conditions for Mulberry. After we get through Cerulean, she's going to go through a presentation on those conditions. We are not going to be asking the Planning Commission for a recommendation tonight on Mulberry. You know, if if it hits you right and you want to, you certainly have that ability. We will be making a recommendation on the Cerulean application. This application is so much like what we just went through with the Dominion application that everything should be very familiar to you. And so that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with Cerulean, and then we'll turn it over to Hope and let her discuss the battery conditions for you. Please feel free to stop me at any time. A lot of this you've seen, and I'm not going to get into the conditions very heavy at all tonight. They are word for word, with the exception of names, tax maps, road names. They are word for word what this planning commission adopted for the Moon Quarter project just several months ago. So let's look just at an overview. At this point, county staff believes that both the application and the site plan submitted with the amendments is in compliance with the Richmond County zoning ordinance and the requirements of the solar use flushing. We did choose this for this application and for the Mulberry application, something we hadn't done previous, but we were kind of up to our heads in applications. We did contract with the Berkeley Group as a third-party reviewer for both the Cerulean and the Mulberry application. So the Berkeley Group put a separate set of eyes on these applications and agreed also that they are in compliance with our ordinance. We held our 2232 review on January the 10th. The application public hearing was held February 7th, both as required by Virginia Code, and to date, all required advertising notices have been done and done so in accord with Virginia Code. So you'll see here a copy of the site plan. This doesn't really tell you a whole lot. You see a lot of green, you see a lot of hatched areas for the arrays, but what you see is you see a site that is overall 1,469 acres. And of that 1,469 acres, 326 will remain undisturbed from wetlands and RPA. 26 acres is preserved in a 100-foot buffer along Route 3. 140 acres is additional RPA setbacks, so lands outside of the 100-foot RPA that Strata has identified as additional acreage with challenge to topo that they have pulled out. You see 493 acres of actual solar array, 100 acres of stormwater BMPs, and then 384 of just flat open space. Leading to 40% of this site, 593, seeing some sort of development, some sort of earth-moving machine where it may need to be done. That's a really good percentage. As we look at solar applications, I can't tell you what the other ones we've done. I should have looked at those numbers previously, but 40% of the total 1469 is a good percentage. Leaves great additional space to be able to look after stormwater and erosion and sediment control. Really some of our biggest concerns as we consider these applications. So getting in just to the overview of standard conditions, we're talking about tax parcel 38-1, 3877, 3883. Condition number 4 requires the approved site plan, which is all very, very standard. Condition number 5 is in regards to the emergency response plan. What the developer shall do in regards to that. I do hope that we'll be having a meeting with Strata in the next couple of weeks with our emergency response people, similar to what we did with Dominion Energy a few months ago. After it got out of the Planning Commission, Dominion set up a time, our fire chief, our emergency services chief, our sheriff, our captains, we got together on a Zoom with Dominion. They went over a lot of emergency response stuff early on, so I'm hoping that we'll do that similar type of thing with Strata here pretty soon, just to start it off. And then once the facility is built, once the facility is in construction, other planning and other responses will be trained on as well. Talking buffers, heights, and setbacks, really all the same. We're looking at keeping the 100-foot vegetative buffer between Route 3 and the panels of the existing timber. We're talking about 500 feet at a minimum from an existing structure. I believe the closest existing structure to this property is greater than 1,000 feet. I do not have that number with me right now, but I believe it's greater than 1,000 feet. 400 feet from a non-residential structure. I don't think we have any of them to contemplate. Additional lands in the RPAs. Height of 18. those types of things that we've seen plenty of times before. Construction activity, daylight hours, Monday through Saturday. The limited items that they can do on Sunday are referenced here. Construction traffic management plan, this is bonding of the project, bonding of the roads, pre-construction inventory analysis to see what the roads look like, during construction, repairs and maintenance in coordination with VDOT, and then post-construction. We'll have that bonded at 100% of the anticipated repairs, so that in the event that Cerulean does not choose to fix a mess that they may create on the roads, we have that assurance that those roads will be fixed. I don't think that will be an issue, but we do have that assurance. And prior to, and then again, number 15 is regarding the bonding as well. Construction traffic management plan, this shows our delivery routes. This includes the following roads: History Land Highway, State Route 3, along the frontage of the project, to access the site as needed. And then also the limited ability to use Mayon to Cedar Grove to be able to get into the backside of the project. That's going to be more applicable to Mulberry. Mulberry will be accessing based off of Mayon to Cedar Grove. So there'll be limited entrance into Cerulean that way as well. Number 18 is what we require of our solar panels as far as how they are to be constructed. The cadmium, the beryllium, the Gen X, the field applied Teflon coating, and other materials prohibited by federal or state agencies. Number 22 is our 50% rule. This is no greater than 50% of the land may be disturbed at any one time throughout this project. Also some statements in here on how they need to notify the county should they run into a DEQ issue, 24 or 48 hours, and so forth. Number 23 is our test wells, identical to what you saw a couple of months ago. This does incorporate the 2 years. So they will test for the first 2 years, and then on year 3, they're going to be able to skip a couple of years. I believe it's every 3 years thereafter, to make sure that the groundwater levels look the same. Should groundwater levels indicate something serious or contaminant, the testing could then be done every year. The county would have that ability to start that testing every year.
We probably touched on this, but if there were to be an incident at the solar field, we could ask for testing at any time.
Absolutely, anytime.
Okay. I'm talking about like a major disaster, a fire, something like that.
Yeah, so we have that ability through both number 23 and 24, through the soil testing. Both of those are some kind of fail-safes that we've put in. I haven't seen these conditions, and I would let the solar industry tell you, but these are conditions that I feel are pretty specific to Richmond County. I haven't seen a whole lot of other localities that are putting a lot of these conditions in. Y'all can tell me if I'm wrong. Are y'all seeing localities start putting soil and water testing conditions into their projects?
I have not.
Very few. So this is kind of an extra step that Richmond County has taken to ensure that. So we go above and beyond on that. Number 24, soil testing. Talks about the soil testing there. Burning of debris, which would be similar to what we allow for Moot Corner. This is the air curtain technology. And again, we have the ability to shut down, should we need to shut down. Can't burn during burn bans. So right now, February 15th through the end of April, with the statewide burn ban, that would be something that would impact if that construction is going on at that time. And then a decommissioning shall be conducted as set forth in the siting agreement. And that is the agreement that the Board of Supervisors works with the development company on to create that siting agreement. And that decommissioning language was first approved by this planning commission with the Booker's Mill site probably almost 2 years ago, and that's the same language that is still being considered when it comes to decommissioning. So that is a quick overview of our conditions. Didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on them, but would be happy to answer any additional questions you may have, or if you have additional questions for Strata.
Does any of the commissions have any questions, concerns?
I think we beat this
as far as?
And we can come back certainly. So getting into the project recommendation on this project, this is cerulean specific. Application and site plan. Application and site plan are in conformance with the ordinance requirements outlined in the Richmond County zoning ordinance. Again, we utilize the services of the Berkeley Group to help with the application review to ensure the submitted application comply with our zoning ordinance. The conditions pending further amendments to the conditions, which could happen. The conditions in their current format are consistent with the conditions from past projects and adequately protect Richmond County. Our site location is located to the extent that it should have absolute minimal impact to adjacent properties, especially residential communities. Regarding environmental, the entire project footprint is over 1,400 acres, with 493 of those acres being placed in solar and 100 acres used for stormwater BMPs. This gives the property a great deal of space needed for the environmental controls related to stormwater, erosion, and sediment control. All RPA 100-foot buffers have been identified, as well as an additional 140 acres outside of those 100 feet have also been set aside. In total, 876 of the 1,469 total acres will be untouched. All E&S stormwater permitting will be handled through the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. County roadway impacts. So the impacts along the outlined delivery routes will be covered through appropriate bonding in coordination with the county and VDOT to ensure the tax dollars are not used to repair damages caused during construction of the facility. The decommissioning of the site included in the siting agreement is designed to protect the county and property owners from adverse impacts when and if the site is no longer in use. The county anticipated revenue from the, I didn't change that, but that should be cerulean corner, through our revenue share, increased land value, and a potential siting agreement, which is our one-time upfront. This project could bring in an estimated $6.7 million to Richmond County over a 35-year time period to be used for items such as public safety, recreation, educational, capital improvement plans, etc. With that being said, staff would recommend to the Richmond County Planning Commission that you recommend this project for approval to the Richmond County Board of Supervisors. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have on the application. Mr. Chairman.
As I stated in there, when Minion came in here, the only thing that I want to put into the minutes and stuff is that any unforeseen things or events happen, that'll be taken care of in a timely and efficient manner, and to ensure that any negative impacts that happen to adjacent landowners are taken care of immediately. The reason that I say this is one of the many past issues that they have with property owners, and it's taken 6 or more months. So I just want to put that in for the record. That is one of the things that I hope that y'all will take care of if something does unforeseen happen. We've tried to touch all bases, but things might happen, and we don't want the adjacent property owners to have to suffer because of that fact. Anyone else have anything?
I'd like to point out one thing, Chairman. I guess the commissioners have looked at this, but one thing I'd just like to point out with the Booker's Mill that has already been approved and the Moon Corner project, which is under consideration, the project we have before us now, we're talking about potentially 4,454 acres of continuous acres that would be under project, that would be under construction, not construction, but would be, I guess you would say, tied up or put away for the length of these leases. You know, we have a small county, and in my opinion, that's an enormous amount of acres, continuous acres. I just want to point that out, to make sure everybody knows that. These are some of our, in my opinion, which I know these properties pretty well, which Mary and James touched on in last meeting. These are some of our better recreational timberland properties in the county. Very well managed pine plantations and recreational properties. And I just want to point that out, that we're looking at 4,454 acres of contiguous acres with these projects.
Can you explain, from my understanding, what's recreational if it's a woods?
Well, I would say recreational / hunting.
Okay, I'm just asking to understand.
Right.
Because I thought it was timber tracks. Okay,
Right.
okay.
I just want to make sure everybody's taking that into consideration.
Brian, you make a very good point. But that number that you gave is not how many acres of solar panels are actually going to be on those acres. It leaves quite a bit of acreage that's still going to be wooded. And to my knowledge, to this point, nobody has banned hunting on any of these properties outside of the fences. So you're still going to have plenty of what you call recreation in wooded areas on these properties that have solar panels on them.
Are you sure about that?
I have brought it up at the supervisors meeting, and I have yet to hear any supervisor say they were going to ban hunting on any of these properties.
I just didn't know if it was in the lease where they couldn't be on these properties. I don't know, I haven't seen the leases.
Haven't heard of anybody making that recommendation. So there's still going to be a lot of acreage, so far, that, to my knowledge, that are going to be available for the hunters to be out there.
But help me understand. As the owner of the land, can I decide if I want someone to hunt on there or not? Or are you saying that I can't because I want to understand. I'm trying to understand.
See, well, I don't know that, I haven't seen the leases either.
No, but if I own the land, are you saying I can't decide I have to let people hunt on it?
No, I get what you're saying. I mean, if you're the owner of the land, it's your right.
Okay.
I mean.
So I mean, the owners that currently own it now could decide tomorrow, no more hunting, in theory.
True.
If they, okay, all right, I'm just trying to understand. I'm not trying to be argumentative. I just want to make sure. Okay. All right.
I guess I'm more than anything pointing out the fact that it's 4,400 acres, contiguous acres of land that could be.
Does anybody know how the leases are structured? I would assume, but I'm just assuming. What's inside the fence, I'm sure is off limits to that. Anything outside the fence, I would assume, is the landowner's prerogative of who, everything goes as usual or whatever they want to do.
The county is not party to those leases. I don't know if there's somebody from Strata that's prepared to talk about the leases and how they're structured. We certainly do not see those leases.
I mean, are there leases structured in such a way that the only thing you restrict is ingress and egress from the fenced-in area? Everything else is the same, right? Or am I incorrect?
I guess the question could be is, once the solar projects are up, if there's enough land, can somebody go put a house next to the fence?
So I don't know the specific language of this lease, but I'd say in general, most of the time you have requirements for buffering, and that screening has to be protected. Therefore, it is leased property. So I would suggest that, I know on Booker's Mill, most of that acreage is leased property. Even the RPA preserved areas, it's leased property. They're different rates typically.
So if it's leased, then the only hunting you would be able to do, unless you went to whoever has the lease, which is probably going to be a big no-go.
I mean, if it was my solar field and you worried about it catching on fire, I wouldn't let anybody go in there.
Right.
I mean, I hate to say it like that, but I could go through.
I could just add that the timber property, there's no hunting going on there. It's an active timber harvesting operation, and that's the majority of the footprint. About a little over 1,300 acres is the timber property. And then the additional parcels which are leased from the Self family, I'm not aware of any hunting taking place on those parcels at this time.
Okay, well, I'm not a hunter, but I'm quite sure it will have an impact. Because deer's going to run through it, doe's going to run through it, does can't read signs.
Neither can the hunters.
And, well, that might be true too. But I wouldn't think that the solar people's going to want hunters out there shooting
Solar panels.
shoot buckshot towards the
Solar
solar panels and, shipping the solar panels, cause I'm pretty sure they're gonna say, no, cause you tell some of these solar panels with buckshot just cause you wanna hunt, so. You know, I know we can talk around this all we want, but with y'all talking in there, y'all probably hunters, you know it's gonna have a negative impact as far as the hunters are concerned, because, you know, you just have much acreage. It may not be leased, but deer's gonna run through them and everything. That much, little bit I do know. So, just to be fully aware, you know, we can talk around all this leasing, not hunting now, not doing, but it will have an impact. Okay, is there anything else? If not, do we have a recommendation from the commission, yea or nay?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the Cerulean Solar Project according to how the county has presented it.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed? Okay, thank you. You've gotten through the first hurdle, and you have the board of supervisors.
Now the fun starts.
Okay. Next thing we have is a review business of Mulberry Storage LLC. Oh.
Alrighty, so I will talk to you all about the Mulberry battery storage. We'll just kind of go over some conditions. You all have not seen those until tonight. I will tell you that they are very similar to the Cerulean, if not almost identical to the Cerulean. But to just catch you back up on the Mulberry storage, for project details on this particular project, this is off of Cedar Grove Road, between Oakland Road and Leon Road. Technology is, of course, battery storage. Total acreage is 40.28, with proposed battery facility acreage of 25. This project will be located on tax map number 38-80, 3881, and 3882. As Morgan noted with Cerulean earlier, we did have the Berkeley Group review this application as well, and they have noted that the submitted application was determined to be in compliance with the solar ordinance for Richmond County. Again, just to catch you up with what has already happened on this project, we did have the 2232 review hearing in January of this year, followed by the special exception public hearing last month. And so you'll see on the screen the site plan for Mulberry. You also have a large copy of that at your desk. You also have the conditions as well. For the Mulberry Energy Storage Project has been modeled after the Cerulean project, since the two projects do share many common aspects with respect to site plan and construction. However, because of safety concerns, there are many conditions added to the battery storage specific conditions. Many of the battery storage specific conditions are those taken from the DeLorean storage project that you may remember us reviewing. But then there are also others that have been added that have been proven successful for Strider Clean Energy. And so I'll just note the additions and the modifications to the conditions, and this is comparing them to Cerulean. So the one thing that I noticed was height, and this was mentioned in a past meeting. The height of the battery energy storage system shall not exceed 25 feet. So that's going to be a little bit taller than the solar conditions that we were just referencing. Also, the requirement of a construction phase plan has been deleted for the battery energy storage project, since the 50% rule is really not going to apply with this. And then, most importantly, safety. A separate section has been inserted into the conditions to address safety measures during and after construction, as well as monitoring and maintenance measures for the units throughout the life of the battery system. So that's the main thing that I kind of wanted to review with you all tonight. And you can follow along in the safety section if you'd like of your conditions. So I'll just kind of read through these, just kind of catching the highlights. Of course, lithium-ion battery cells will be used in the battery management system. the enclosure of the cabinet will provide a secondary layer of physical containment of the batteries and will be equipped with cooling, ventilation, and a dry pipe manual flooding system. And I think you talked about that at length last meeting. The battery management system will monitor battery operations and temperature, and the system will be programmed to shut off before any potential thermal runaway could take place. Also, the system will be on an appropriate foundation, located in accordance with the site plan that is submitted. Access to the battery containers and electrical switchgear will be from the exterior for normal operations. Access to the interior will not be permitted while the container is in operation. Statements of qualifications from the battery energy storage system will be provided to the county. And safety testing and failure modes analysis data for the battery storage system will be provided to the county as well. Copies of the applicable product certifications will be provided to the county. The applicant or any future owner shall be liable for contaminants escaping battery cells, and the company will be responsible for remediation and cost within a 90-day period from the discovery of the contamination. The applicant will collaborate with county first responders, and Morgan touched on that a little bit earlier. They are agreeing to supply adequate access egress for first responders, adequate facility signage, addressing battery chemistry and how to handle it in an emergency event, adequate facility signage addressing hazardous materials, accessible fire safety data sheets, system-specific emergency response plans. We will get into what they will offer with training classes. Certainly have training classes prior to construction, during construction, after setup, and then they've also agreed to do that additional training as necessary with volunteers coming in and out. They'll provide emergency lighting, battery racks installed according to NFPA 855 standards. This will facilitate the isolation of a failed battery.
What's the right closer?
Sufficient
What's the
shutdown.
right closer? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sufficient shutdown capability, system appropriate sensors and alarms, and then lastly, they will provide drainage for any water runoff if necessary. The applicant or any future owner shall conduct annual general inspections for the battery units and report to the county on their conditions. So in conclusion, the conditions in the site plan are available for you tonight. With the public hearing having already taken place, please take the month to review those conditions. As Morgan noted at the beginning of the meeting, I don't think we're at a spot where we're ready to vote on this as of yet, but if it hits you that way, we certainly can go with it. We do have some representatives here from Strata Clean Energy tonight that will certainly be available to answer any questions that you may have. Then, do you want to ask about the reclosure?
Well, he told me what it was.
Okay. Did you
I hadn't seen
that
it.
with the commission?
A recloser is like a light switch, it just cuts the
Or a
electricity off
circuit
when you have
breaker.
a circuit breaker. If you have a fault on the line, it automatically,
Sorry, Hope.
No problem.
it's kind of on how it's set. Recloser's on our line, set too fast, too slow, full fast, or whatever it is. And if something gets on there and clears itself, then it won't completely go off, but if it doesn't, it will, shut the system down. That's what a recloser does.
We also have Joel that is connected on Zoom tonight. If we have questions for him, we can certainly hear from him as well.
Any questions, concerns, comments from the?
I guess, Mr. Chairman, my question was the 90-day period for remediation for contamination. Is that a standard for? That just seems like a long time. I don't, if there was a leak of some sort, to have it corrected, or at least contained.
Right, and actually we were looking at some of that language. I think the important thing is that we contain it and respond to it and make sure that it does not impact or, any areas off-site. And so the 90 days is absolutely plenty of time to respond. As soon as we find something, we'll be responding to it and reporting to necessary agencies as necessary, and getting any third parties involved where to bring it up in response is necessary. I think where, and it's probably a good thing that we're still kind of working through these conditions. I think we need to work on potentially adding that to the extent we are diligently pursuing remediation within that 90-day period, that, okay, maybe we actually need a little bit more time. So I think we had a little bit of concern about it. Yeah, 90 days is enough to get out there and make sure it's not going anywhere else, but maybe we need a little bit more time to fully clean it up to the county's satisfaction. So we may come back with a couple edits to offer.
And I mean, I was even thinking, set a time for the containment. But as you mentioned, you may have to revisit 2 or 3 times if there was a leak of some sort to remediate that situation. So just something I saw going through.
Yeah, no, and your question is definitely noted, and I think we'll come back with a more refined condition that we can offer.
Is there going to be a berm around the site to contain any water floods and stuff?
That would depend on the type of release. So berms, and I'm probably getting outside my expertise here, but it would depend on the type of release, how you would contain that.
I know, with our transformers and stuff, we're required to put a berm, so no floods go off site.
So
That gets in here, if you go in here with waters and stuff coming out there, a berm may not be a bad idea to ensure that it stays on site and does not flow off site. By just putting a simple berm of, rocks or dirt or something, I know that's something that we required with us, with transformers and stuff.
Right, the electrical transformers, the high voltage transformers are usually sitting inside of a large concrete containment that can sufficient to contain the amount of the liquid or the mineral oil inside the transformer, plus some freeboard for any rain that may have accumulated in there. And that would be the case for the transformer at the substation that steps the voltage up before it goes into the transmission line. I can't speak to the specific equipment that might be used on any type of battery release. Maybe Joel, did you have anything to add there? But I think a berm is a pretty standard type of equipment we might deploy, but maybe Joel has a more context.
Yeah, so the batteries have nothing to leak, but the transformers do have that vegetable oil inside of it, and there will be secondary containment of sufficient size to contain those if they do leak, but nothing else on site can leak.
Okay, I'll just if you go in there with water and stuff and the liquid from the water,
Oh, you're talking about for firefighting water?
That comes out there, that might flow up from the site, where a simple berm would keep it within the site itself, is what I'm talking about. I don't know if there's any concern of the other commissioners, but,
Or the flooding water.
yeah, that comes in here, that's what I'm, just something like a simple berm around it might solve some of that problem.
So what I'd like to see, Mr. Chairman, is some language for containment versus remediation. I think giving them more than 90 days to remediate it, it's fine, but I would like to see a much shorter time period to contain it.
Okay?
That's my opinion.
You hear it now? Okay.
So we do have stormwater control measures that surround the facility, because we have to deal with the DEQ requirements to remediate runoff. So there are ditches that collect stormwater and take it to a basin that's on site. So there's the ability to capture all the water on the site. The drawdown orifice on the box could be plugged in an emergency. That is certainly an option. I've had that discussion before with another client on another site. So there are stormwater features that will be in place that would catch this water.
So.
Yeah, Brett, that's exactly what I was gonna say. The way that we handle this on other sites is in accordance with the Virginia regulations for handling fire water, where basically what it says is anything that pools up inside the battery container, we'll pump that out. Everything else that comes out flows across the site as a sheet flow, and it gets contained into the stormwater basin. So the water runoff is about the same as fire water if there was a structure fire. The added benefit is unlike a structure fire where it just ends up in the stormwater or in the common city stormwater system, possibly into like a septic or tile drainage field. Here it's actually going to be contained in our stormwater basin, and then we can remove it from there.
Okay, and then, once that's took out, you're gonna make sure that any chemicals and stuff that comes from the batteries that's in there are gonna be tested and taken out, dirt and all that good kind of stuff will be. Because I know when we have a transformer leak or something or another, we've got to go out there, even though it's mineral oil, doesn't make any difference. We gotta go down, we gotta bag up the dirt, and we get down to dry dirt, and everything has to be bagged up and taken off. So if you're going in to the battery system and that comes out of there with the chemicals that's in the batteries, and it flows over in now, then I would think that you would have to take that dirt out of that basin, because it's gonna eventually go, seep into the ground, or it's gonna maybe flow out or something or another. So it's just something that I would like to see also, that if that does happen, on the case it does happen, that it's not only the water gonna be contained and stuff, but it's, the soil and stuff's gonna be taken care of and redone out of that also, to make sure that nothing happens in batteries that might happen. Hopefully nothing ever will, but I'm just going with things that happen. That's some things that needs to be considered going forward.
Yeah, that's right. It's actually far less hazardous than if you actually have like a transformer catch fire. A couple consultancies that are recognized fire experts in the field, as well as folks like the Edison Electric Institute, which is kind of like a think tank for the utility industry. They've done various burn testing on these batteries, and then they put them out with water and they test what's in there. And the constituents are basically the same as the structure fire. The worst thing that's in there is trace amounts of heavy metals. And in our emergency response procedure, what we do is around the affected unit, we put a special filter boom around the outside of the perimeter that basically filters those heavy metals out of the water. And then what comes out beyond the filter boom is basically normal fire water discharge. So you've taken the worst part of it out already. If it were for some reason to be any worse than that, of course we would take care of it. We're willing to agree to some provisions to that effect. But the fire water that comes off this is basically same as the structure. It contains a little bit of ash, it has a slight alkalinity to it, but it's no worse.
Right, well, I'd like to see something in there that states that if you do have a fire, it goes in here, that the water that is in that basin, the soil stuff is tested to see exactly what's what. And if it is, it will be taken care of, and that's not in our conditions, but I'd like to have something.
That's perfectly reasonable, we can add that.
Yes, okay. Anything else? All right, with the recommendation of the staff, we will hold off on this and look over these conditions and then see what else is brought before us in our April meeting to go forward into that.
Just know that these are work in progress, and so as you're reviewing them, if you think of something, please let me know so that we can work with them. We'll be working with legal counsel on some changes on these conditions, and so we'd like to have your thoughts along the way.
Is the commission in agreement with us holding off till April? Just my decision. All right, consensus is yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay. Next on our agenda is the solar balance discussion. Morgan will review the future solar project.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think this is going to be maybe a lengthy discussion to start with, and hopefully you've had a chance to at least review some of this information that we've been able to put together for you. And I think Brian does bring up a good point that he brought up a while ago. And I think that feeling is probably what's led to the request of the Board of Supervisors for the Planning Commission to study this. We have received and are processing 2 fairly large applications as we speak, and with one already approved. So let's just take a look, and we're just going to run through this. Stop me at any point, please. You'll see the applications that we have approved thus far, 6 of them, totaling 145.9 megawatts, 1,779 acres. You see the 2 projects under consideration currently, the Dominion Moon Corner project as well as the Strata Cerulean project. Combined 122 megawatts, combined 2,824 acres. A couple of months ago, the Planning Commission recommended to the Board of Supervisors, and I think this was kind of the beginning of this, was a minimum acreage requirement, tightening it up a little bit to make it that a bigger minimum acreage be required. The Planning Commission, if I remember correctly, recommended to the board 50 acres, and that non-contiguous parcels could not be joined, or contiguous parcels could not be joined for the purpose of creating 50 acres. The board took that under consideration, took public comment, amended that down a little bit, if I remember correctly. I think we're at 40 acres. So we're at 40 acres as a minimum, and adjoining property owners may join. So I think that was kind of the beginning of this discussion. During that discussion, we did another analysis for the board, and you do not have this attached, but we have determined that in this county, we have 111,594 tax-paying acres.
Repeat that number, please.
111,594. Total acreage of the county is a little over 119 when you back out non-taxable. And when you say non-taxable, what do I mean? I mean the United States Fish and Wildlife, Virginia Department of Transportation, Virginia Department of Corrections, county facilities, things like that would back out of that number. So that gives us 111,594 taxable acres of property in Richmond County.
Does that include under conservatory?
Does not. No, you back that out. So
back
that out. So the total acreage of the county is a little over 119,000.
Okay.
Back out the non-taxable, and that gives you the 111,594.
Thank you.
So at this point in time, Richmond County has approved 1,779 acres. That brings you to 1.6% of the county's land. If you factor in the two proposed projects, brings total acreage. Yes, sir.
Question, that 1.6, is that?
I'm using the 111 number, not the 119 number.
Understand, the 1.6%, is that solar panel acreage or project?
Project acreage. Project acreage. Under lease project acreage, not solar acreage. Now you could come up with another number. The Booker's Mill project probably has 600 to 700 under panel. This is total project, not total panels.
Want to look at it.
Total affected area.
Total affected area.
Okay, that's what I'm just trying to make sure I got the numbers.
It would be a smaller number, obviously, if you were to just look at panels.
Thank you.
So at this point in time, 1.6%. The two projects under consideration, if approved fully by the Board of Supervisors, that gets you 4,603 acres in the county, 4.13%. 5%, just so you know, a baseline 5% of the county is 5,579 acres. So when we look at solar, what are we talking about? We're talking about two types. We're talking about utility scale, and we're talking about small scale. Our utility scale is what we're talking about tonight. Greater than 50 acres, greater than 5 megawatts, near high voltage transmission, substation, etc. These projects are bigger in nature. Small scale, these are our 1 to 5 megawatt projects, generally on lands less than 50 acres, and projects that do not necessarily need high voltage or transmission. They can go into your everyday three-phase line. More three-phase throughout the county than there is transmission. So you've got more availability to site small projects than you do large projects.
Real quick, does Dominion or does the county have a map of all the three-phase lines in Richmond County? Or can we get one?
Richmond County does not. I would have to work with both Dominion and the cooperative to try to find that. I have that on my list of things to do. I have not done that yet. Getting a three-phase map of the county.
Yeah, that would be helpful for us to understand exactly where
Yeah.
these projects could potentially go. I think that's
The
something
small
we might
ones.
need before
Yeah.
we make any final determinations.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So that's kind of just an overall of where we are today, which brought this conversation onto us. I believe it was Peyton or JR last month, we were talking about the revenue impacts. I wanted to go over kind of, okay, what are the revenue impacts to a local government for going through solar? So let's start with revenue share. Revenue share was approved about 2.5 years ago in the General Assembly, Virginia Code Section 58.1, 2636. This is for projects greater than 5 megawatts. It allows localities to charge $1,400 per megawatt indexed 10% every 5 years. So there's two ways a county could get revenue from a solar facility. You could do your general real estate method, or you could do revenue share. Now, what's the real estate method? What's the revenue share method? Richmond County has elected through ordinance to go with revenue share. So we have elected through ordinance to go with the $1,400 per megawatt per year, index 10% every 5 years. There's another method, which was the initial method, which was not very beneficial to local governments. That was taxing solar equipment as machinery and tools with an 80% tax exemption with a very slanted depreciation schedule. So what does that mean? That's a lot of weird stuff. All right, so first of all, they've got an 80% tax exemption. So on $1 million project, they're automatically $800,000 exempt to begin with. So you only have $200,000 that you can even consider taxing. Of that $200,000, the depreciation schedule of the value of the improvements was a huge slant down. So after like 5 or 6 years, you're only taxing like 50% of that $200,000. So when the county elected revenue share 2 years ago, revenue share was the best option. In my opinion, revenue share is still the best option. The SCC, State Corporation Commission, handles that depreciation schedule. It's still 80% exempt through the state, but the depreciation schedule now looks like this. Now the depreciation schedule, or using that method for revenue for the county, could be more beneficial than revenue share, if the panels were replaced no greater than every 10 years. So if Strata Solar came in and said, all right, we're going to wholesale replace these panels every 10 years to keep it as efficient as possible, the county would be more beneficial going that method. There's no guarantee that they're going to do that. There's also not a known, okay? So when you're going that way, you don't know what your annual revenue is. It's hit or miss because of the depreciation. Now with revenue share, you know what your revenue is. You take 62 megawatts times $1,400, you know that in year one, the revenue to Richmond County is that amount. Revenue share is where we are right now, and it's probably where we need to be. The other taxation way, there's some counties that are still doing it, but not many. Most people are in revenue share these days. And so just to give you, okay, you hear $1,400 per megawatt index, 10% annually. Well, what does $1,400 per megawatt mean? That means that through Booker's Mill, project already approved, I'll talk about just a project already approved, I won't talk about projects that are pending. Just through Booker's Mill, that means $177,000 annually to Richmond County's annual operating budget. You can do the math on the Moon Corner and the Cerulean project. Obviously, you know, those two projects combined are a little bit smaller than Booker's Mill, but you could say about $120,000 a year from those two projects. What is $120,000 to Richmond County? You know, that's, you know, almost 2 cents on our tax rate. You know, when our total taxable value in the county is only about $840 million of total property, each penny on our tax rate brings in about 75 cents. So, I mean, about 75,000. I'm sorry, not 75 cents.
Can I stop you for
yes.
a second? I went through this, and everything's on everything greater than 5 megawatts.
Correct.
So the way I read that is anything less than 5 megawatts, there is no revenue share, and we just get the county just gets the increased value of the improvement to the land. Is that correct?
By code. Now, General Assembly does have legislation going this year. That's going to bring that 5 megawatt exemption down to 1. But what we do have is we've got what's called Virginia Code Section 15.2-2208, or 2288, I'm sorry. We've used Code Section 15.2-2288 with the IPS projects the county approved recently. That allows the county to work with the developer to negotiate a payment with that developer for approval, you know, to offset some sort of service or to go towards a capital improvement plan. So the 4 smaller projects, when you go back to the first page, the 4 IPS projects through Code Section 2288 did agree to that $1,400 per megawatt per year. So, so a small project like 4 megawatts, you're going to get, hopefully, you're going to get that $1,400 per megawatt, and then you're going to get a little bit of an increase in the land value. Overall, a project less than 5 is probably worth no more than $20,000 a year.
One more dumb question.
That was a
Like,
good question.
we look at Booker Mill, the way I read it, it's proposed 127 megawatts. So is the revenue share based on what it can, the 127, or if this year it was, and I'm trying to be comical, it was really cloudy and they only did 120 megawatts?
It's based off of the 127. It's not based off of what they produce, it's based off of what they're set up to produce. Capacity of what they can.
Well, but as the panels age, they aren't as efficient, but do we still go with the number that they started with and not what they're actually doing?
Correct.
Yes, because at revenue share, we do. You know,
Right.
if we had not elected revenue share and we'd gone with that other taxing method, yes, the depreciation of the value would go down.
Okay.
Another important thing to note, and this doesn't really matter for the purposes of the Planning Commission, schools in Virginia are funded by the state of Virginia by what's called the composite index, CPI, local ability to pay. So there's a formula that's put in a hopper every year, every 2 years, every biennium, and it spits out what's called a CPI for every county, local ability to pay. It's based off of 3 things. It's based off of the value of the property in the county, it's based off of the taxable sales in a county, and it's based off of the taxable incomes in a county. Richmond County CPI right now is about a 0.30. In very simple terms, that means that Richmond County pays for about 30% of our educational costs. The state of Virginia picks up about 70% of our educational costs. Take Lancaster County, Northumberland County, Middlesex County. Lots of riverfront value. I just told you a minute ago, we've got $840 million of assessed taxable property in Richmond County. Those counties have over $2 billion of assessed value. The higher the assessed value, the higher the composite index. So a county like Lancaster, Northumberland, Middlesex, with those big values, have what's called a 0.8. 0.8 is the highest you can go on that scale, which is pretty much meaning that Northumberland County is paying 80% of their educational costs, the state of Virginia is paying 20%. Why am I going there? Revenue share does not impact your CPI.
Okay.
If we were to tax it the other way, that value would get placed into that hopper, could make our CPI go from 0.30 to 0.3.2. All of a sudden, we've got to pick up another $220,000 of education costs. So that's excuse me, another benefit of the revenue share is not impacting CPI.
I think
I
that's
didn't
very smart.
intend to go there, but I did. All right.
Hey, Morley,
Yes.
one question. You talking about in 10 years, technology, the way and stuff it is, say that they come in here and can get more than 127 megawatts by changing the things. We still at the 127?
They have to come back before us.
They would, that's right.
Okay.
They would have to come back before us.
So I mean, they're tied in, they can produce them, if, they may have less panels, but if they want to increase the.
127 is what the SEP is that they've received. If panels become much more efficient over the next 10 years, and they can pull 300 megawatts out of the exact same array, I would ask legal this, but I would imagine they'd have to come back and amend their SEP, and they would then have 300 megawatts that would hop into this formula.
That's, I just didn't know if they'd come in, I just want to know if it would change.
So past revenue share, then we get into the siting agreement negotiations, and that's Code Section 15.2, 2316.7. And again, this is for utility scale solar greater than 5 megawatts. The Virginia Code allows a locality to negotiate a siting agreement with the solar company that may include a voluntary payment to the locality for the purpose of financial compensation to the host locality to address capital needs set out in the A, capital improvement plan adopted by the locality, B, current fiscal budget. So that's open-ended as can be. You can just use it to finance your yearly operations. Number C, fiscal fund balance policy adopted by the host locality, so we could take the money and just place it into our savings account, or assistance by the applicant in the deployment of broadband. Currently, we have one adopted siting agreement. That's the Booker's Mill project. We're in process with Moon Corner at this point. That's on the board agenda for this Thursday. We have not gotten to the point with Cerulean at this point. But I can, it's very public at this point that the siting agreement with Booker's Mill was for an upfront payment to the county, 90 days post completion of $1,656,000. The board has elected to use this money in the future for public safety upgrades, recreation, economic development, and capital improvement planning. And again, we're currently in the process of negotiating some other ones right now, which, in my opinion, are more beneficial on a per megawatt basis. But again, these are dollars, as I'm talking to these developers and I'm talking to these companies, I'm making it clear to them, and this is kind of where the board has gone with this, we want to be in a position to improve Richmond County. Okay, we don't want to negotiate big annual payments, big one-time payments, just to put them in a bank account. We want to deploy these funds back into the community, recreation fields, upgrades to public safety, building EMS buildings in the Farnham area, building a new EMS building in Newland in a couple of years, adding on to the fire departments that we currently have, increasing our 911 radio systems, buying more radios, upgrading those facilities, working with the Little League, working with the YMCA. We want these funds to deploy back into the community to do projects that we need to do, but without really, really, really large tax increases, we just couldn't do them. So it's an ability for us to reinvest back into the community in some big capital projects. Third, and I don't talk about this one much because it's one that I don't really know a true number at, and that's the increased value of property. We estimate that the increased value of property on property in which panels are located, that increases the value between $10,000 and $12,000 per acre per year in value. So just an example, 600 acres times $10,000 per acre, that gives you $6 million in increased land value. Times that by our tax rate of 0.7, and that brings $42,000 a year off of that increased value of property. And that's just an example.
Real quick, Morgan, how did you come up with this 10 to 12,000 per acre valuation?
The Commissioner of Revenue is in charge of valuing property. That is a number.
I'm sorry, how did she come up with the number?
How did we come up with that number? We came up with that number about 2 years ago in the first project. We worked with our assessor. So we work with a third-party real estate assessor every 4 years for reassessment. We haven't gotten to this point yet because we don't have a built facility. And so pretty much we asked him the question, in localities that you've seen solar deployed so far, what are you seeing in increased value based off of going from a strict ag use to more of a ag industry use? And the number he gave us was between that $10,000 and $12,000.
Okay.
So because we haven't assessed any of these properties at this point because we don't have anything built. So we really can only just use an estimate.
So we don't have to come back on it. I have a couple things noted here if you don't mind.
Okay.
If this is the kind of assessment that's going to go through with these commercial size projects, can a homeowner with solar on the roof expect their taxes to go up because they put solar on the roof?
Currently, yes. Yeah, so right now, residential solar is taxable by the locality. I say this again, there's legislation going through the General Assembly trying to make that 100% tax exempt, and that's where local governments get mad at the state of Virginia, is when they start dictating how we assess taxes at the local level. So as of right now, you put solar on your home, it is an improvement that the Commissioner of the Revenue will pick up in value and it will be taxed. Counties have the ability to exempt it at this point in time, and the state of Virginia is trying to mandate the exemption of it. But right now it's taxable.
Okay. Off tangent, okay, if the homeowner wants to put solar on the roof to reduce or eliminate their electric bills, what's the difference between the solar panel and a generator that they're pouring gas into? Obviously they're pouring the gas into, but you don't tax the generator for their electricity.
For their electricity?
I mean,
no, but you would tax the improvement. You would tax the $10,000 Generac that's sitting outside the same way you would tax the $10,000 worth of solar panels that are sitting on the roof.
Personal property, is that?
Yeah. Well, personal property under, real estate, yeah, personal property associated with real estate.
so it would be strictly for improvements to the property then, the value of the solar panels themselves? there would be no like profit sharing or?
No. The
Because
county
you're not
wouldn't get
paid.
involved in what they're saving, behind the meter. No, it would simply be the value of that improvement.
Well, I know because Richmond County gets some tax dollars off from the electric company, but, but that you wouldn't get.
We get tax dollars from the electric company under the SCC Public Service, and that's real estate as well. So that's Dominion and the Co-op and Atlantic Broadband. They have to report to the SCC annually the amount of value they have in our locality, and then they pay us for it. So they pay taxes in that way.
I was just trying to figure out if the average homeowner is going to worry about their tax bill going sky high because they just want to eliminate their electric bill.
And it's not going to go sky high. I mean, if you think about it, you put $10,000 solar panels on a house. 10,000 times your tax rate of 70 cents, that would add $70 a year at that value. $20,000, you're $140. So your taxes aren't going to go sky high because of residential solar.
Okay, thank you.
Just to let you know, John, you're talking about what the electric company pays taxes. It's called continued property records. And it's the poles, transformers, the line,
Trucks.
arms.
Any
I'm just talking about on the line itself.
Yeah.
You don't really pay for the electricity that's being produced. You pay for the continued property records, just like home or anything else that you have personal property. It's considered personal property.
Right.
Pay for the co-op. So that's where the revenue comes in for us taxes that electric companies are paying for.
I've got a question for you, Morgan. I know you were talking about, the amount that the state goes back to giving for schools, what the county is responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you said profit sharing is not involved with that. Would this increase in real estate be involved, or is that considered all part of the equation of profit sharing?
No, this increased value of real estate would be included.
So that we could
That
see
could
a
be
negative
included.
effect from that.
You still could see a negative effect from that increased property value. But what's going to not happen is, okay, let's talk about this same 600 acres, $6 million of increased land value. What we're not talking about is a solar farm, let's just say a 100 megawatt solar facility, costs about $2 million a megawatt. You're talking about $200 million. You're not going to see that $200 million show up. You might see the 4s, the 5s, the 6s, and you might be right. You might see a half a point change or a quarter of a point change every biennium, but you're not going to see $200 million impacting your total taxable value. But yes, you're right.
And would the one-time payment affect the CPI as well?
No, that's not reflected whatsoever in any of that. That's just a negotiation that the state doesn't even know about. They allow us to do it, but they don't know.
bills, right?
And then other financials, which, are harder to quantify, they do exist. To what level do they exist? It's a question that everybody could probably get a different answer to, but these are jobs, spending on services locally, contract services, food from stores, drinks, they do exist, but in our calculations that we look at, we rarely, would ever do anything with them. Any questions on kind of the revenue impacts at this point? Revenue share, siting agreement negotiations, increased value of property, and some other financials.
I just want to say I appreciate you and Hope laying that out, because I've never been able to put it all together. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I certainly don't expect an answer, because I know like the battery power facilities are not being considered in this.
Mhm.
I understand that. Is there any thoughts on how you would look at that later on?
Well, the batteries are the same thing, $1,400 per megawatt.
So it's megawatt still?
Yep,
Okay.
$1,400 per megawatt, and you still have the ability to do a siting agreement with the batteries. Now, we haven't done a battery siting agreement at this point, and we could be headed that way at some point. The siting agreement, the purpose of the siting agreement is to help the county really overcome a big loss of land that doesn't provide that many jobs, hardly any jobs. Batteries obviously don't take up the amount of land that solar facilities do, and I think I wrote it here on the back page, they weren't considered, but I think that the Mulberry battery site of 75 megawatts is only looking at about 20 acres, for all of that. So The siting agreement, you see a $1.5 million siting agreement for Booker's Mill. You know, look for similar siting agreements to come out on other ones. Batteries are not, I don't want to put a number on it because we haven't come up with one. And I don't want to shortchange ourselves, but you're not
I just
in
didn't know
that
if it
same
would
level.
be a different rate, you know, different risk, you know, that I just didn't.
Revenue share is the same, siting agreement is still case-by-case negotiations. So let's move on to page 3. This is just as we've gone through, and I do believe, and I talk to a lot of counties on a pretty regular basis about their projects. I believe that the conditions and the way that we have vetted and screened projects over the past 2.5 years, I don't know if we're the strongest in the state when it comes to the requirements, but we're not far behind. I think that we've done a really good job, the Planning Commission and the board have done a really good job with our buffers and setbacks and screening and what we require in construction traffic management plans, our RPAs, decommission, and ENS. You know, that's the biggest concern, you know, as we move forward and actually constructing these. I mean, Brian's right. I mean, you're talking 4,400 acres of near contiguous property, and contiguous with the exception of some road beds in between them, and being developed in that area of the county potentially over the next 4, 5, 6 years. Erosion and sediment control and stormwater management are the biggest focuses that our engineers, the county, the developers need to pay attention to. You know, we saw what happened in Louisa County. You know, we've talked to Dominion Power about what happened in Louisa County at that Belcher project. You know, people have seen the news on what happened. We don't want that to happen. What you're seeing now, which is a good sign, this project that we looked at tonight, 493 acres of solar on about 1,500 total acres. You didn't see that 3 years ago, 2 years ago. You saw 900 acres of solar on 1,600 acres of total. So what they're doing is they're realizing that they need to really focus harder on this ENS and stormwater. So they're getting these bigger tracts of land and creating smaller projects so that they have ample space for basins, you know, stormwater practices, ENS practices, you know, investment, stuff like that. So I think that is positive, but I think that this committee, this planning commission here has done a really good job spending a lot of time in these conditions, and this is just kind of an example of them over the last couple of years. Like I said, groundwater and soil monitoring, I haven't heard of anyone else doing groundwater and soil monitoring. Do I think it's going to find anything? I hope not. You know, I hope it's not going to find anything, but we'll know. And then some other considerations, you know, materials that we allow, burning debris. Does anybody have any questions kind of on these other considerations that we have done so far? So that kind of leads us to options to consider. Could be more. I may have some. I just have kind of 4 options here that I've laid out. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at. Number 1, pretty much do nothing other than what we're doing. Continue processing and acting on solar applications as they are received on a case-by-case basis, as we do currently. Number 2, determine other parameters, such as maximum allowable acreage or megawatts the county is willing to consider for solar development in Richmond County. And once that number is reached, to discontinue the allowance of future solar in Richmond County. Number 3, create more strict and stringent requirements through the zoning ordinance that would create a process in which solar applications would have to meet stricter standards in order to be approved in Richmond County. Number 4, county to predetermine lands that we feel are suitable for solar development and only permit solar projects proposed on those properties. So let's go through 1, 2, 3, and 4 in a little bit more detail. Stop me at any time. Number 1, continue processing and deciding on solar applications as they are received on a case-by-case basis as currently exists. While at this time we are not aware of any forthcoming applications beyond the current ones that we have under consideration, we are certainly aware that developers continue to research Richmond County for potential future sites. And not only Richmond County, they're pursuing every rural county that has land. That's what they need. They need land, and rural counties have it. Thus far, we feel that the county has done very well in vetting proposed projects, considering all the facts and viewpoints, and this process to this point has worked well for us. Option 2, determining other parameters such as maximal allowable acreage or megawatts the county is willing to consider for solar development in Richmond County. Once that number is reached, discontinue the allowance of future solar in Richmond County. Through this approach, the county would go on record as to how many acres or megawatts we would be willing to consider in the county prior to no longer accepting or approving applications past that set number. While this approach seems to make sense and would certainly set the future maximum on solar, this approach could set the county up for costly litigation in the future. Primary reasons for that: the number set would likely be arbitrary and potentially subjective. So you have for example, a developer or landowner that wants to propose a project to the county. They have an ideal site, they have ideal buffers, they have ideal space, adequate space for erosion and sediment control, stormwater. They're located adjacent to transmission, substation, three-phase, whatever we are. And the project is pretty much a project that's even maybe better than the county has approved in the past, but because we've set this cap, it could put landowners in a spot to where, landowners are looking to diversify in a lot of ways their income streams, and a lot of that is through solar development. So personally, I think I just feel like that could set us up for that. Counties are doing it, don't get me wrong. Counties are doing it. Saw an article yesterday or 2 days ago, Bedford County. Bedford County had a solar ordinance in front of them. They haven't had a solar ordinance, haven't considered solar at this point. And they didn't even adopt the solar ordinance. So by not adopting the solar ordinance, they pretty much have said, solar is not welcome in Bedford County. So you're seeing a lot of different approaches that localities are doing, similar to what we're doing tonight, to try to figure out a way to say, hey, we understand why it's needed and what's pushing it, but we've got to make sure that we're not sold out, for that purpose. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Morgan, and Commissioners, Chairman, the word, to allow maximum on the megawatts or acreage. I think I can understand acreage to a point if we're going to have minimums or maximums. But the megawatts, I don't think we should even be considering, because as technology improves in the future, let's take Booker's Mill, 147 megawatt project. Let's say 10, 15 years down the road, a new fantastic technology comes out and they apply to improve their panels they have, put newer ones on there, double the capacity. If they can double the capacity using the same amount of acreage, I think that should not be a consideration. I think you should be allowed to do that. Right. So for that reason, I think we should not limit the amount of megawatts in the county at all. I mean, if you can put 1,000 megawatts on 1 acre, you're going to do it. Doesn't affect any more buffering, any more land.
Right.
Just my opinion, I think we should remove the limit of megawatts out of the conversation.
Okay.
If we're going to that point, that gets in there, Morgan, I'm just going to tell you on my opinion, personal opinion, option 2 is a non-go in any way, shape, or form. I don't think that you can restrict people's property rights, so I don't even think, just to help John and whatever we're going forward, I'm looking at this, that option 2 would even be a consideration of saying, you're going to have this much land and no more, this many megawatts or more, because you can find an ideal place for megawatts on an ideal piece of property. That would be even smaller scales and stuff, so. Right. If they're going in and putting too much, I don't know what other commissioners are, but option 2 to me is something that I think we're going a step too far.
Well, but I think
I appreciate you giving it to us, but.
Yeah. Well, I think you can essentially, and I don't want to say do it completely, but I think option 3 is a way that we don't set ourselves up for landowners being overly mad because we've just said, okay, we're going to allow 4,800 acres. Sorry you didn't get in soon enough, but that's all we're allowing. To make option 3, create more strict and stringent requirements through the zoning ordinance that would create a process in which solar applications would have to meet stricter standards in order to be approved by Richmond County. This would allow the county to ultimately still permit solar projects within the county, both small scale and utility scale, but it would ensure that all future projects are even better sited and managed than those that had previously been approved. Additional requirements could include items such as location. Just as an example, because we've kind of had this discussion with our comprehensive plan the other night, if solar proposals within a half a mile from the town of Warsaw corporate limits, could be more heavily vetted. These are lands that are future growth areas for both the town and the county that could support enhanced commercial or residential opportunities. The relation to transmission or substation or three-phase power lines, should be direct. What is direct? I don't know what direct is, but should be direct. Here's an idea that I wish we had thought of previously, and it's one that I've heard of recently, and that's the third bullet point, and that's the requirement of financial assurance and documentation from solar developers to ensure the county has the knowledge that should the process be initiated, it is likely to be built. Many projects these days are speculative and put the county through a long and difficult process, and we should have the assurance that if proposed, the project is likely to be built. Number 4, we do this, or bullet point 4, we do this, but we could take it to another level, and that's an enhanced topo analysis of the proposed property. We could require stricter erosion and sediment control and stormwater management plans to be designed. Right now, pretty much what does DEQ call it? Minimum standards. Minimum standards. There are minimum standards. I would like to think are good standards, but you can always require plans to be built to a more strict guideline. So we could look at doing that. Greater setbacks. 500 feet from an adjacent property line or public roadway. Right now we're doing 500 feet from the home. We could do more, you could do less, but you could make this through the zoning ordinance. And right now we're doing it all through conditions. So right now when a solar project comes, and most of the time the applicant knows what conditions this body has passed previously. And so they're coming in knowing that. They know what's kind of already set. But without it being the law, without it being in the zoning ordinance, there's still a lot of variation, that this planning commission and the board of supervisors can consider. You put things like this into the zoning ordinance, you're really getting this thing tight to the point that if a project doesn't meet them, here's the board of zoning appeals for a potential variance, or I'm sorry, this doesn't, meet the standards. We could take our minimum setbacks off of RPAs. We do this in some areas and we don't, just depending on the topo. But we could pull RPAs 200 feet. The Code of Virginia requires 100 feet. We could pull them back 200 feet. The parcels that we consider with natural timber screening, we require 100 foot of remaining timber. We could take that to 150 foot. These are not inclusive of what could be done. These are just as I was typing and looking at different things on different options. They're just kind of some things that I came up with. So there are more. Could be more.
But if we do those and this is zoning, they still got to come before the planning commission and board of supervisors to approve?
Absolutely. You've got to go through, an ordinance amendment which requires public hearing. So you would be amending your solar ordinance to include additional items. Back through a public hearing for that amendment with the zoning ordinance, with the planning commission and the board.
But once it's in the zoning ordinance, do they come before us?
Oh, absolutely.
That's my question.
I know.
No, still SAP.
Right,
We just wouldn't see them unless they had these.
Yeah, you wouldn't see them unless they.
It's like the 40 acres continues
What we
to.
did see
Pretty
were
much.
these.
Right.
It kind of goes along with that we have, we went the past. I just want to.
Yeah, this would still be an A1 SEP. It would just be, you don't see them unless they hit X, Y, Z, and we can confirm they hit X, Y, Z.
And my next question that gets in here, if we set some of these standards and stuff, and they don't meet it, they go through the board of zoning appeals
Well, they would
first.
need a variance. I mean, if they had a project that for some reason did not meet the zoning ordinance, they would then need a variance from the zoning ordinance. they would still have to come back through the SEP process.
I say, but
With that variance.
if they come through the BZA, and BZA say, yes, you can set it back, say, if we had 5, said you can set it back to 3, then it starts, and then the same process we got now happens.
Yeah, so if we had that case, let's just say, for example, project A comes in, we say you have to have 500 feet to a property line, they come in and say, oh, I can only get 400 feet to a property line. Our first step would be, okay, in order to be able to do this, you would need a variance. So we would say, this is the information to the Board of Zoning Appeals, this is how you apply for a variance. Go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, BZA might say, hey, this land is located, 6 miles away from any human development. There is absolutely no reason if this setback be 500 feet, we'll allow your 400-foot setback here. They got their 400-foot setback, they come to the Planning Commission with the SCP, with that variance and that 400-foot setback.
That's, I just wanted to make sure if we said something like that, they had an opportunity, in case if they hear something that they can come back
My concern, if
and
we get too strict, then there's gonna be some projects
Yeah.
that get kicked out, that I think some exceptions could
That's,
be made.
I had the same concern, because you can never legislate
Every project
everything,
is
every
unique in
condition.
its own
Yeah.
way, and I think it needs to be dealt with in its own unique way.
And that's kind of what you're doing under option 1.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we're doing now. And I think we do a good job at it. I mean, nothing is taken lightly. We look at everything from every angle. We've done it enough now, it's all we need about anymore. So, I mean, we're doing pretty good with looking at A. But if we want to go further, we do have variances that could help us out in a situation where a project meets most of the criteria, but maybe 1 or 2 things don't. I just don't know what we're going to pick, that's.
So I had, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just answering, my opinion, that's what, planning commission's here for, is to discuss those things. And if we do option 3 and look at that, and we find different things, then we vote on it, and it gives an opportunity to look and see what's the best for the county and the property owners also, that comes in there. And it might come down to exactly what you said, it's too stringent, no, we ain't gonna do that one. And then it gets down now, and we say, all right, well, let's just go back to option 1, and we do what we have, but we've done our due diligence of what the Board of Supervisors wants us to do. And we may find 1 or 2 other things that we can put in there that would help with the zoning going forward. That's just my opinion.
And I think we talked about at the last meeting, I don't think that this is something that this board needs to figure out what we're gonna do tonight. I think the purpose of tonight was just to get some details and continue to talk about it. I think this is a longer process.
Go ahead, you were first.
2 questions I had for you, Morgan and Hope, and I don't even know if you can tell us this, but what kind of, besides what we're looking at on the front page here, what else is coming down the pike?
I don't know. Like I
So
said,
we don't have anything.
I said, we do not have anything. We do not have any applications
Okay.
pending, or that we're aware will be pending soon. We get calls frequently from engineering firms and law firms asking about our zoning ordinance, asking about our process, asking about, past projects. They don't always tell us where they're looking.
Sure.
Seldom do they tell us where they're looking until they're ready to put an application in.
And the other question I had, I like option 3, but I agree with the group. I think we've done a really good job, which is option 1. But, and I know this is your best guess, but from a planning commission point of view, if we were to adopt something similar to option 3, would that save us in these meetings any type of real time, or would we still go through them one by one?
You'd still go through them.
Yeah.
You still go through them,
It's just that you might get, 1 or 2 may not come through because they don't meet some of these.
Yeah,
Some of these
what
things.
option 3 does is it makes the projects, if you go to a very, very strict set of standards, it makes the projects that come to you ideal candidates. So you could, they're grade A projects, the location fits, the setbacks fit, they're a great location, they're a grade A project. You could bring down these requirements a little bit and say, okay, we want to consider grade B projects. I think that for the most part, especially when we look at utility scale that we've done over the last couple of years and that we're still doing, those have been in the locations that have minimal impacts to residential, minimal impacts to the visual view shed of the county. You know, the one thing that's still the unknown is erosion sediment control and stormwater management. I mean, we're very conscientious. We don't want it impacting groundwater, but we definitely damn sure don't want it impacting surface water. And, you know, we can say all we want that the engineering is going to be top tier, the construction is going to be top tier, but until the bulldozers hit the ground, the silk fence goes up, and BMPs are put into place, we can just hope that we got good plans and good construction.
Yeah.
You know, hell, a single-family home going up on an acre can create an issue. I mean,
Look what happened when they developed going into my dad's house on the left.
talk about a nightmare.
Oh my God.
19 acres.
And it caused more runoff and mess than you ever seen. My dad's pond turned to chocolate milk for months on end from that.
He used a different word.
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
So, quick question. If we chose option 3, and if they got a variance, and then it came to us and we didn't agree with the variance they were given, I'm just playing what-if games.
You could still make the conditions stricter. Conditions can always be stricter.
No, but let's just say they didn't meet, they got approval to not meet the 500 foot, that somebody else said 400 foot's okay, and it got to us and we're like, we really like 500 feet for this, and we don't agree with the previous people that approved that. I'm playing.
You could, through the conditions, still require that 500 feet, I think.
Or deny it. And let
Well, I
the
guess
supervisor
we're
make a
essentially doing that
recommendation.
now with extending buffers and doing that now under the.
All through the conditions, because when you look at your zoning ordinance currently, the zoning ordinance for solar is really no different from a home. What's the setback on this? 25 feet?
From side and rear, 25 feet, 50 feet from the edge of the road.
Right. So those are the mandated setbacks that solar currently have, just like doing a single-family home. We, through the conditions, work with the developer, work with the planning commission, and say, 25 feet, and we'll cut it. So by putting it in the zoning ordinance, it takes some of that stuff away from more case by case and mandates. But you could always go stricter. Say you put 500 feet as a setback, and say it was adjacent to a school, and you didn't think 500 was enough, even though the ordinance said 500, you could make it 1,000. So in Len's example, BZA could say, hey, here's a variance, but it could come to the conditions of the planning commission. Hey, 400 isn't enough. We want 500.
Okay,
Either do it or.
Just curious. I'm playing what if.
Yeah, just, I think what it gets at is just giving them the opportunity to bring it forth. If not, they wouldn't even have the opportunity to bring it forth.
Sure, I understand.
The committee, and I think with, we're gonna have a lot of discussion with option 3, going through all of us, different opinions, but it gives us the opportunity to look at the property rights of the owner of that piece of property, plus the adjacent property owners, plus the county.
Right.
And I feel like we're gonna have done our due diligence to the best of our abilities if we look at option 3 and look at some of these. I'm just, going to that part. Instead of each one that comes in, on every one of them, it gives, people can look at that they've done. And it's not saying, even though you do something like this, 5-10 years down the line, you can come back and say that we're gonna rezone this and we're gonna relook at this and redo it again. It's always changeable.
And see, personally, I agree with you. I like that option 3. I'm looking at it from the comprehensive plan, which a few of us are involved with, and how is it measurable? I like the plan. Personally, I like that. But when we're looking forward into where the county is going, we can't really do anything with that, with this type of option. That you want to have a plan, like Brian, to your point, of keeping the natural resources of the county. Another wrench in this whole thing is.
It's going to be a hard discussion down the lines that we're going to be having, that, in that other committee that we have, going to have those, I know what you're saying. And that's going to lead into this. That's going to, and we're going to have different discussions back and forth to come up with what we think is the best going forward. And at the bottom line on all of it goes to the board of supervisors, and they're going to be the, final say on any of it, because they changed the other wording that we had. And not saying they won't do the same thing here.
it would certainly help if we had some projects out of the ground.
I
I mean, here we are, we're stringing them right on out, and now the damn one has started yet.
I
And
know.
we've been here for 2.5 years talking about it.
Yeah, I know.
I was just gonna bring up, it would be nice to have a project that we could do a walkthrough, actually see what we're talking about. We're looking to make changes for the third time from 2016, when we first approved solar projects in the county. And now we're looking to change things a third time, or potentially, and we don't even have any projects to look at. We're speculating. We don't have a whole bunch coming in right now. We've got 6 or 7 of them that are working. I think if we do anything, maybe we should just table this for a little while. It's a good idea to try to maybe make changes, but let's table it for a little while, my opinion only, until we can actually get a project up and running, so we can see what kind of harm potentially it has done, or benefits it has done. Right now, we're flying blind on speculation. I think we might be getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Well, I agree to that to a point, but until
Because
we have
I'm in
something.
favor of just leaving it option 1. I don't like option 3 at all,
Yeah.
because of property rights. I mean, you want to put 500-foot buffers on some, against somebody else who might be landlocked, who might just be woods. I think it might be a little bit too extreme, but either way, I think we need to see some actual projects up and running before we consider making any more changes.
See,
We
I-
can put
I
a
think-
moratorium.
I think you have to have a.
No more projects coming in.
range to
We
go.
do a moratorium potentially until we get a project up and running. But until then, I don't think we should be making any more changes at all.
Who's to say we don't have 10 more applicants next year that covers another 5 to 10,000 acres?
Cross bridges when you get to them.
I know, but it's gonna be too late to
But-
be approved.
Well, but to address Brian's
We're
concern.
here every month. If you have 1 or 2 come in,
I know that, John.
you're gonna have 10 coming in a month, we'll know.
We'll address each one. At what point do we address that we need to have a limit?
Well, sometimes you have a cumulative
Yeah.
effect, which is Brian's concern, but isn't it the issue with, because the transmission lines are in limited places, that the companies are gonna gravitate to those hot spots, which is what they've done in this one example, and by default, they're gonna get, it's gonna be a large clump of land, the next hot spot, they're all gonna jump around that, because there are only so many of them, and you're gonna see another large one somewhere else. Maybe not, there's not gonna be, the entire county is really not an option for transmission lines. We know that. There's only limited number, and when you do find a good one, everybody's gonna show up.
I think,
So I don't know how
you lead
to,
us into option 4, which kind of speaks to that point, and that's the county predetermining lands that we feel are suitable for solar development and only permit solar projects proposed on these properties. So this would essentially be the county, and again, I'm just laying out options. I'm not advocating for this, because I think option 4 is a lot like option 2, and would probably guard against it. But this would pretty much be the county putting another layer on the future land use map and saying, we will only consider solar on these lands adjacent to transmission, lands adjacent to substations, lands adjacent to 3-phase power. The market, I think, is going to dictate the lands that are suitable for solar to begin with, like you just said. It's going to limit it more on utility scale than it will on 3-phase or on small scale.
Yeah.
Because you're right, we have one major transmission line that runs through the county, and it spurs off at Indian Field, and it goes down to Lancaster, and that's where we're seeing this in Farnham-Robley, Mayon area, and then it spurs over across Toteski Creek, and crosses over in Essex County right there at the mouth of Toteski Creek. That's kind of how that transmission line comes into the county, splits, and goes that way. So the area between Indian Field and Chins Mill Pond is really, there's a small portion of this transmission line up north of 3, up in the Newland area, but not a tremendous amount from my recollection. I think your biggest possibility is Indian Field down to Chins Mill.
right. So I mean,
Where
by,
we're seeing.
It's probably gonna work itself out in that regard.
Do we have any idea when the straddle might break ground?
Yes, they do. What are they waiting on at this point? DEQ?
Still
So DEQ
DEQ.
stuff?
I mean,
They're very close as well at Hemmings. Hemmings is
because
very
if you
close.
don't have anything coming down the highway, Alice, and we have, and I know this hasn't happened, but if everything gets approved, you're looking at 4% of the total taxable acres in Richmond County could we table any future solar applications until we have one completed? Or does that?
The problem with that, and it's a good question, because a lot of counties are going through that, and it's going to be interesting on how the response is. The Code of Virginia requires a planning commission, when an application is received, to process it within a time period, 60 or 90 days. I can't remember what the code says. Do you remember, is it 90 days? The planning commission has, if they don't act on it, it's been deemed approved to the governing body.
I think it's 90 days.
90 days. So we could say, yeah, the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission could say, hey, Board, we recommend that you place a moratorium on solar until we see the first facility built. And then an application comes in for a 20 megawatt facility. And we say, hey, we put a moratorium on this. And their attorney says, well, that doesn't mean anything. You still have this amount of time to process this application. So, it could work.
I'm just, to John's point, we're trying to come up with terms and conditions to something we've never seen finished.
But does that set us up for a lawsuit?
You could, the developer
That's
could.
what I thought.
Yeah, we could say, hey, we're not processing.
We set precedents in that we've done everyone, and now we say, well, not your turn.
Says you shall.
All right, that's fair. All right, you got me there, Brian.
Can I say something as far as tourism for the county? We want tourism. We get a lot of money, hopefully, from tourism, people coming into the county. And we are a forestry county, which we have to understand that. Recently, a large swath of land was forested along Route 3 just past Bunker Hill in Farnham area. For 3 years, until the trees start growing back, it looks like something I don't want to say on air. If that was a solar project, you'd have 300-foot buffer up against the road, so you wouldn't see the minefield destruction of the tree forestry that happened behind it. So that's an aesthetic part. The buffering that we're doing on the solar projects is a lot better than seeing the forested land barren for 3 years until trees start coming up. That being said, I'm a forester, so when I cleared my land, I lived with it, so that's how long I know it takes for the trees to grow back up. It's not pleasant to look at, but as a tourist aspect of it in the county, the buffering around the solar farms, the people coming in won't even see the solar farms. I think it's aesthetically more pleasing than what we see now with just the trees being forested right to the road's edge. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to speak as far as to John's point, and Peyton's and stuff, that's going to hit, yes. We've done several projects, and none of them had started in Richmond County. And we don't know how it's going to impact Richmond County. Doesn't mean that we can't go through this northern neck and see how these other solar projects has impacted Tappahannock, Montrose. And if you want to see another one, go down that Lyles, turn right there where the substation is, go down there and look at that godforsaken looking one, which I just recently went down there and looked at. That's about one of our substations. That is just about the worst that I have seen of the bunch that's out there. And even though they may not be into Richmond County, doesn't mean that we haven't got the ability to go and look and see what kind of impact it has on the northern neck. My view is, yeah, we can continue on and table it, kick the can down the road, but eventually it's going to stop. I'll bring up one thing. It's like the schools that we got up here. They kept kicking it down the county, kicking it, till we had to do something. And I think, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure any day. So I don't think that we should table it. I don't think that we should not go with it. Not that we have to sit there and we have to go with him. We have to decide that this month, next month, or even this year. But that doesn't mean that I don't think that we shouldn't start discussing it based on what we've seen in other parts and on the TV. And, I was one of the ones that went up and visited a solar plant. Several of us went up and seen what what a good one could look like. And everything that gets in here.
Yeah, we didn't even know that thing was back there other than the power lines coming out. You didn't know it was there.
No, that gets in there. So,
do any other counties have buffers like we're proposing? I mean, it's good to go see another solar farm, but I want to see one that's got the same buffering that we have, that we're proposing. I mean, it's easy to go down the road and see fenced solar panels.
I'll be honest with you, I think we set some trends on some buffering when it came to existing timber properties. I think some counties that are entertaining timber properties, which is what we've done mainly of, are going to what we kind of set on that 100.
We don't have any solar farms we can go to today that has a buffering in place that we can go and see.
Well, that one that Harry was just mentioning, that Scott facility in Powhatan, it's way back off the road, the trees, I mean, it's probably 1,000 feet off the road, it's behind some houses and stuff. I don't know that they purposely did what it is that we do. It just was kind of natural in the way that their land was. It was way back there.
And that was a nice,
Oh, yeah.
facility. Like I said, you didn't even know it was there. And when you got back in here, I mean, you went, oh my Lord, and it opened up.
Well, I think what we've proposed for the most part is gonna be similar to that.
We're hoping, I think that's the fear of I won't say unknown, we just want to see one and come up.
And I know it's just that, I think it's a discussion that, and it's something that we can think about this month, and we come back next month, and if we still have other concerns and stuff, we can come back the following month and decide, if we want to continue going forward with this is something that we're going to decide tonight, or maybe even not next month, to go forward with one of these options. But we'll look at the options, think about what's been said tonight, and then we can come back and revisit it.
Is our main objective, Harry, is to keep our adjacent landowners as happy as possible? Is that what you think our main objective would be on a lot of these?
My main objective is doing what's best for Richmond County as a whole. I do not want to limit the owners of property, especially who want to diversify their land, to go there. When you get on some of these smaller ones that we have here, and you've got several homes out there, and you've got several homeowners, and I'm sorry, but if somebody comes out there, I don't know, you might be living by one of them. For me personally, I can tell you, I don't want a solar plant behind my house that I have to be around and stuff. So if we go there and we set these boundaries, or we set something or another that sets up that says, this is our minimums that we've come up with, and they still got to come to us, we're looking out for Richmond County as a whole, and not limiting the property owner to diversify his property at that point too. That's what I'm trying. That's my objective of going forward with these. I mean, this is you go in here. Solar to me is about like the barbed wire of the Old West. It forever changed the landscape. Solar today is going to be like the barbed wire of the Old West. It's going to forever change the landscape going forward. However it gets in there, it's going to change the landscape that we live in. I mean, it's just like Ron said about, I mean, some of the things that was used to be done will no longer be happening, just like, So to me, that's what I'm getting, personally on my end, that's what I'm looking at, is trying to look at for Richmond County citizenship as a whole.
Make sure you get that in a minute.
What's that?
The barbed wire.
Oh, well, I mean, well, if you ever look at it, I know it is, but it is, that they had open range, and had all that, and once that came in.
No, it was good, I liked it.
It's nothing that they can do.
I'm messing with you, but I like it.
I know, but it's just what I was thinking, so I think we ought to do everything we possibly can, so that we don't, somebody comes in here and says, well, we can set up here for confidence, or default, any other commissioners can say that we've done our due diligence going forward, and then if other people come forward and don't like what we've done, they can bring it back up and rezone it, and take out some of the restrictions or something that we might do. But that's like what Morgan says, if you get something like that, then we're going to have, things in here that's been really considered, and it's, when they get here, it's basically just, okay, now you're going to put a stamp of approval, but you won't have as many biggest discussions and stuff going forward if we kind of look at it in that way. That's just my point of view. Any other discussion and stuff on this? If not, we'll just, just put it on the agenda for next time to discuss.
Did the board have a slant towards this as to what they were looking for? Or they were just go off and do good stuff?
No, they just turned it over to those.
Okay.
I was in there. I think John was in there too, and they said they want something to come back from the plan commission.
When the first one's broken
Just
ground
curious,
yet?
I didn't know if they had
No, after they done what they done, then they said, well, we need to have some restrictions and stuff, send it back to the planning commission. And that's one reason that I think we can't keep it out of line, because we've been mandated by the board to look
They
at
want to
it.
see what we recommend.
Yeah, still waiting
Yeah.
for DEQ stuff.
So they don't have a, okay.
They want us to do the legwork.
No, that's fair.
Yeah, pass the book.
That's why we get the big bucks.
All right, if anything else on that, we'll go to the next thing on the agenda, which is the floodplain ordinance. Thank you, Morgan.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, you all have a copy of the proposed floodplain ordinance in your packet. This, of course, is nothing that we'll decide on tonight either. I just kind of wanted to kind of catch you all up. This is a 25-page document that sort of governs any waterfront development that we have in the county. So as previously noted, Richmond County's flood maps have been updated by FEMA, and in order to finalize that process and remain a part of the NFIP, which is the National Flood Insurance Program, the floodplain ordinance that we have before us must be reviewed and modified. Prior to the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors holding any kind of public hearings for adoption of this ordinance, it must be approved by the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation. I have submitted the model ordinance for review, and do not expect any issues because we did pretty much stick to the models of the state ordinance, which is what we have done in the past. Our new maps become effective July 5th of this year, and so we are in a little bit of a race timing-wise. By July 5th, the ordinance must be adopted by the locality and further approved by FEMA. So the sooner I can get it approved by the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors and then get FEMA's stamp of approval, better off we'll be. Because I don't know if you probably understand that the National Flood Insurance Program is what all of our waterfront property owners have their flood insurance written through. And so we certainly don't want to risk being dropped from that flood insurance program. So again, this ordinance that's in front of you is the model ordinance. As Morgan noted earlier, with ordinances and regulations, we can step it up and be more strict than what the state requires. But I will say that working with DCR and what we've done so far with the floodplain ordinance and the FEMA changes, most localities will stick very tight to the state model ordinance. And that's what Richmond County has done in the past. And again, that's what this one is modeled after. So with that being said, I know that you all probably have not had a chance to digest 25 pages of the floodplain ordinance, but I would like to get your permission to schedule an April public hearing for it, because as with any ordinance change, it has to be a public hearing. That doesn't mean you have to vote on it in April. If you're not ready to vote on it, if you have questions, concerns, I can definitely get those answers for you from DCR, which is the department that I've been working with for the ordinance.
If we don't vote until May, will we still meet your timeline, or do we get into a race condition? You can't use my question.
Do they need?
You can't jump on my question. You can ride double, just don't hit the barbed wire. That's gonna be in the minutes.
I think what I'll do
Will we still meet your
is-
time?
I think I'll kind of see what the temperature of this group is in April and go ahead and get it before the board kind of together with.
So I think you're encouraging us to do our homework and try to be prepared for April is what I'm hearing.
That would be great.
Okay, all
That
right.
would be great. But if that doesn't happen, then I'm not upset with anyone.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Is there anything in here that the county wants us to specifically look at? Do you have any recommendations for changes, or the county's pretty much, this is it?
It's for the most part very consistent with what we already have, with what we're already doing. There was nothing, when I reviewed it and compared it to what we're working under now, there was nothing glaring that we should be concerned about.
Thank you.
It's a lot to look at.
Any
It's a
other?
lot to follow,
It's a
too.
lot.
I'm assuming you'll read it thoroughly, Jay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Need a motion?
Need a motion to
Yes.
set up. Yeah.
So moved to have a public hearing next
Set.
month.
Second, all those approve, raise your right hand. Opposed? Okay, set it up.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
will do. Thank you. And then the only other thing I had to add to tonight's before I will let us out of here is the Planning Commissioners Program. I put information in front of each of you for that. If that's something that you're interested in, please reach out and I'll get you. But anyway, if any of you all are interested in that training, just let me know. And if this session doesn't work, I did list the other sessions that would be available.
It is a good class for those that
It's a lot of
haven't taken,
class.
I've already taken it, that's why I was saying no.
How
Okay.
painful is it now?
Pardon?
How painful is it?
It was more rewarding than painful. And I don't know how they do it now with Zoom and everything else. You go into beginning and there's a classroom part, you get a written, or books to read, and you got to do a written assignment while you're at home, and then you go back for a final, one day in there on site, if you will. So first day on site, do at home stuff, and then last day on site. It was it helped a lot. So,
And see, last year they just did those two virtually,
yeah.
which kind of makes it nice. You can fit it, it's a set time that you can sort of
Plan for it.
Right. But, it's all, like you say, it's all.
If you think you're gonna hang around, it's worth doing. And the reward is you get to hang around longer. There's a carrot for you.
Doing it virtually, or they doing it in person?
This session is virtual. Now,
Okay.
what they do moving forward, things are relaxing a little bit.
There's like a
So
written
you don't know
assignment.
if the June session will be virtual.
I do not know that at this time.
There's some written assignments, but you do that at home, and it's spread out. I assume they're still doing that one.
I know when Glenn and I did it many moons ago, we were in person. I kind of found it nice because we got to meet other people from around the state for a weekend, 2 weekends.
It was interesting to see what some of the other counties, the problems they had or didn't have that, compare them to what we.
Plus a lot of the speakers and guest speakers they brought in.
Yeah, that was pretty
That was
cool.
very good.
This solar's a hot topic, it wasn't last year.
Yeah, we didn't have that when we were there.
No.
Didn't exist.
But they're gonna
Wish
talk
it had
about
been.
like some of the really hot topics that
Back
localities
in
are
the dark
dealing with, but
ages,
they're
when I
also
went
gonna
to the
go back and
BZA,
help you
you didn't have
understand,
written work.
like the whole process. They break it down so that it's just easier for you to absorb.
No, I would recommend if you can find the time. That is.
It kind of
Just
makes
let
us
me
a
know.
little bit more sense, makes sense.
Anybody got any other business? Anyone of the commissioners? Hearing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you for your time, gentlemen and ladies.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
All right, sir.